Hello, my name is David Butler, and I'm delighted to be reading as part of the Holding Cell. Big thanks to both Simon and Roz Lewis. And today, what I thought I'd read is a story from my first collection, which is, as you can see, No Greater Love. And for these surreal times, it's a story about an accumulation of dead bodies showing up in Dublin in the run up to the 2016 anniversary, and it's entitled In the Name of God and the Dead Generations. No one remembered having seen the dead man get on the train. Most were too caught up in the electric rush to have glanced behind them. Others recalled fragments. Noticing how he jerked at every judder, the pair of tattooed lovers on a jaunt from Tala had assumed he was one more drunk. There was no shortage of drunks all over the seafront. The sombre Latvian couple, who'd got on several rides later, had supposed much the same, for all that he wasn't exactly slumped over. And the flock of prattling schoolgirls, dressed up like Barbies, breathlessly repeated how they thought the creepy guy in the hat was part of the act. But no one could be found who'd actually seen the dead man climb on board. Even the old operator, a dead eye at spotting fare dodgers, simply could not say for how many turns the corpse had ridden the ghost train. Drawn by the flicker of blue lights and rumour, pockets of onlookers began to idle in the precincts of the attraction. The night air grew charged with speculation. Giddy questions flittered about like bats. 20 minutes on, why was the body still stuck there under a sheet in the end carriage? Why hadn't those two paramedics lifted it onto a stretcher? Weird, that. And what were the boys in blue up to, asking so many questions, scribbling away on their pads, looking all serious and jabbering into their walkie-talkies? Tell you one thing, there must have been something dead suspicious about the way he went, because otherwise, you think so? Because I'll tell you one thing, the way that siren shrieked inside there put the heart across me, so it did. You ask me, he'd a weak heart. Would you ever cop onto yourself and the place crawling with the guards? Hard to see how anyone could have sneaked up on him, but seeing how he was in the last carriage and everything. A priest, I heard he was, or a Protestant. I doubt that. Come here, you won the Vanguarda. Now, what exactly is she trying to find out from them schoolgirls? Are they, what, 12 years of age? What's the story with the blue and white tape all around the gaff, like something out of CSI Miami? By the time the detectives arrived, the rumours had taken on more definite contours. It seemed there was no sign at all of a wound. Nothing to say he'd been shot, or stabbed, or strangled even. But he'd hardly died of heart failure either. The thing of it was, and this was seriously feckin' weird if you thought about it, the body was already cold when they tried to rouse it. Your man there was saying. And for your information, the reason it's still up there propping up that white sheet like a pantomime ghost is on account of it's already stiff with rigor mortis. Now that shook you. To move him out of that carriage now, you'd have to break both his legs, so you would. So, you're saying he must have been dead before ever they put him on the train? Must have been, man. They must have killed him earlier on, an overdose of drugs maybe, or poison, and then stuck him up there as a warning. How'd you make that out? I'm only saying. By the following morning, the bones of the prank were on every front page. The consensus was that medical students were behind it, up to no good as ever at this ragtime of the year. Why else would the corpse have been dressed up in a shabby suit out of Oxfam, several sizes too large for it? Why did it sport a pair of golf shoes but no socks, a Roman Catholic collar, and a battered Panama pushed well down onto his crown? The broadsheets had gone to print long before the state pathologist's preliminary findings were released, but already it was common knowledge that the cadaver had been deceased for a considerable period of time. Months, perhaps years. It had been washed, shaved entirely, and it smelled vaguely, though persistently, of formaldehyde. Not only that, but as one evening tabloid had it, that body apparently contained enough chemicals to have preserved an elephant, never mind a human. There was only one problem with the supposition, which laid the blame squarely at the foot of medical students. It was a problem that began to wax over the days to follow, even as the story faded on the 6 and 7 pages. There was no missing corpse. Not from Earlsfort Terrace, nor Trinity College, nor any of the university hospitals, nor any Dublin undertakers, nor the city morgue. The guards cast their net wider. Galway, Cork, Limerick, Waterford, nothing. By the close of the second week, they cast it as far as the north, but it always came in empty. No morgue nor theatre on the island had registered the theft of a body. In the absence of a cadaver, rumours began to take wing. A grave had been violated, and the corpse dug up a bare day after it was buried. Someone's sister-in-law had seen the evidence with her own eyes out in Blessington Cemetery. Not at all. The whole thing was a publicity gimmick on the part of the travelling fair. And the figure, a mummy that used to do the rounds with them in the days before law and custom began to frown on such fairground attractions. Nope. A reliable source told the brother the body had been smuggled in from Holland inside a refrigerated container, so it had. Listen, word is, from someone who should know, it was trolled up in a dragnet down in Wexford years ago, and some Looney Tunes taxidermist brought it on the QT and took the trouble to preserve it, and now he's after dying. Not a bit of it, sure. The body wasn't really a body at all. The whole thing was a hoax from start to finish. Did you not know that? The prank and the 1001 tales it gave rise to would likely have died a death if it hadn't been for the timely appearance of the second stiff. This discovery was made one Sunday morning by an elderly English couple and out exercising their even more arthritic retriever on Killiney Hill. The bitch was of such a placid disposition that the couple were astonished, not to say mortified, when she began to bark furiously at the lady in the straw hat and feather boa who was sitting with her back to the famine folly, for all the world as if she was taking the April sun. But the dog wasn't fooled for a minute by the way the sea breeze animated the boa and set the pheasant feather a tremble. The bitch's evidence was entirely olfactory. A deputy commissioner put in an appearance on the 6 o'clock news that same evening to appeal to whomever it was who was behind the sick joke to kindly desist and to have a consideration for matters of public hygiene, to say nothing of the trauma that might well ensue if a child or a person of delicate sensibilities were to stumble across a dead body in a public place. He further appealed to anyone who might have seen somebody acting suspiciously in the vicinity of the famine folly on Killiney Hill, or in the Bray area the previous month, or who might have any information as to the origin of the two bodies in question, to come forward, or indeed to contact the Garda Síochána on the confidential number that will be displayed on the screen at the end of the bulletin. Plenty came forward. The phone, as I say, scarcely stopped hopping, but as Monday dawned, the police were no nearer to solving the mystery. Although the Deputy Commissioner had made no mention of it, it somehow became common knowledge that under the deceased's gloved hand there had lain a first edition hardback, unsigned, of Edna O'Brien's A Pagan Place. So much thought had gone into the lady's costume, and to the previous, a vicar was it meant to be, that the book could hardly be an accidental choice. By the time the appeal for information had graduated onto Crime Watch the following week, the Garda Síochána were sick, sore and tired of hearing theories relating to that particular detail. The appeal to the public was quietly relegated to the back burner. The third corpse really put the wind up the public. Wild theories began to circulate once the facts came out. Having left their Deb's dance up in Artane at blue o'clock in the morning, the four stragglers had been vexed when the final cab in the taxi rank made no move to take the place of its fellows once they'd been noisily engaged. After waving, whistling, and dancing at it to no avail, the brashest of the debutantes, a girl well known for taking no nonsense, took off the stilettos that were killing her so they were, marched barefoot as far as the driver's window, and, when her impatient rat-tat-tat with the heel of a shoe went entirely ignored, had yanked the door open, only to have the driver teeter rigidly out onto the tarmac. That the corpse appeared to be African in origin merely added to the state of panic that gripped the city the following day. For the first time, the rumours began to assume a supernatural hue. It was difficult to see how else the thing might have been pulled off, unless someone had been crazy enough to manoeuvre the taxi into position while hunkered down in the passenger seat. with one hand reaching through the dead man's legs onto the accelerator and the other on the steering wheel. But even so, how could they see to drive? Or when precisely did they slip away into the night? Was it before or after your man the Nigerian, was it? Turned out to be a stiff. It made you think. Maybe there was something queer going on. First a parish priest, then you one reading a pagan book, and now this. A note on Twitter, uncorroborated but widely disseminated, maintained the taxi's license number was 666. All that summer, the city was host to a plague of pranksters. Teenagers and oddballs for the most part, who delighted in dressing up in morbid costumes, who prostrated themselves histrionically in doorways, or draped themselves across public monuments. Their pictures propagated, unchecked, throughout Facebook and other social networks, and were widely imitated in cities not fortunate enough to have been visited by the dead. There were genuine false alarms too. During the Bloomsday festivities, the body of a man washed up at the 40-foot. The hands and feet had been bound. It was the first assumed to be the next term in the macabre series, until a Garda spokesman assured the public that the victim, a certain Matthew Kane, was well known to the police. The drowning was a result of nothing more sinister than a gangland feud. Strange to say, the public were more disappointed than relieved. And all the while, the speculation grew more wild and feverish. By the time the fourth and fifth corpses were found, sitting in casual embrace at the back of a cinema, there were broadcasts going out daily in 7 European and 2 Asian languages. Dublin had quite simply never seen anything like it. The Minister for Tourism and Culture could only dream of such coverage during the long planned for 2016 celebrations. Publicity to die for, quipped one tabloid, not without sympathy. Then the dead lovers surfaced. The usherette of the Miramax, a pretty foreign national with imperfect English and perfect teeth, said she'd grown suspicious not so much for they make no move to leave, once light come up, but because for next 5 minutes they make no move at all, and don't even take off 3D glasses. A tub of popcorn on the girl's lap was 2/3 gone. The mobile in the boy's hand still turned to silent. Their tickets had been punched. Conspiracy theorists seized immediately on the film. It was a summer blockbuster about angels and demons battling for control of the New York Stock Exchange. The sixth corpse may well have been the first. It was discovered fortuitously by an FBI agent named McMurrah, who was visiting the old country for a second time, having tried unsuccessfully to trace his roots the previous year. No doubt it was his investigative instinct that made him look twice at the military figure lying on the stretcher in the Waxworks Museum of College Green. In any event, when he pulled the imitation Citizen Army cap from the head of the wounded commandant, he revealed the same close-shorn scalp as had characterized the previous 5 cadavers, although the lady in Killiney had donned an elaborate wig. What made this discovery of particular interest was that, in anticipation of the centenary, the display had been put together some weeks prior to the Funfair's arrival in Bray the previous March. Was it possible then that the corpse had faced down the dummy British firing squad in the full public glare for 5 months before anyone had noticed? On foot of that discovery, bizarre tales of shop window mannequins that were no mannequins and night watchmen that were no watchmen began to do the rounds. There was no 7th corpse. Perhaps there was never meant to be. One by one, the foreign journalists packed up their satellite vans and departed. As weeks gave way to months, and months to seasons, the memory of the giddiness the strange visitors had occasioned began to subside. Less and less were people inclined to share their theories, or to relate their own close encounters with the dead. The Garda forensics team assigned the thankless task of identifying the bodies was whittled down to 2, and, as the centenary year finally dawned, to a single junior member. The entire episode began to assume the contours of a national delusion, like Lord Lucan or the moving statues. At last, even BBC Northern Ireland lost interest. Weighing up the pros and cons as the floats motored past the GPO, the Minister for Tourism and Culture came to the view that, on balance, perhaps it was just as well. It wouldn't do at all to have the centenary celebrations disrupted by the untimely appearance of another bloody corpse. Thank you very much for listening. And again, thanks to Simon and Roz Lewis for this wonderful series they're doing. Bye.